Here it goes.
It's up on the board too.
First comment is, how about
yeah.
you?
Oh, how about that?
I love subject lines on our board that are one word. And then so you get like, okay, all right, I'll bite. Let's. Literally, the post is let's.
See, they know what they're doing, though, Justin. You know what I mean? They know eventually you're just the inquisitive nature is going to take over.
Well, what I'm going to know is I'm going to log in my brain that's who posted it. I'm going to go never again.
Listen, I do it sometimes.
But you'll do a few where you'll do like, here's what I'm thinking, or something. You know.
I think last week I just did if ... with the football tag. But you have the football tag, so that makes it a little bit.
You did. You played the game a little bit. We'll let some people roll in here over the next couple of minutes into the show. Wanted to change it up a little bit. Obviously, we'll still do the show. We'll still give our thoughts, but I just, I just want more questions from the people, whether they're subscribers of ours or they're popping on and they're not. I just want to hear a little bit more from them because, man, a lot of opinions, a lot of energy, a lot of passion, a lot of people that care. So
definitely true.
Where people are at. All right. As we're waiting for people to populate, I'll just go ahead and give a quick shout out to our show sponsor, Session Cocktail. Man, I was down there on Friday for the happy hour, which was awesome. I got 4. Alan, I need to send you. So I had a guy named David, who's a member of the board, who I guess just started working for Clyde Mays, and brought me a bag of Clyde Mays, like awesome. 4 different boxes of miniatures. So I got 4. So I can Zach. All right, so shit, I gotta get one to Zach too. We'll get a 5th one somehow. But
give Zach mine. We're good to go.
But yeah. Anyway, a bunch of people have come in and had a drink and popped by and said hey to me and just said they're part of the board and they love everybody and so that's really cool. I like meeting people and hearing the good things about Auburn Live. So go check out. Zach says he doesn't want it either. Cool.
Double me
up. More for Jeffrey. Cool. Yeah. So go. But anyway, we did the happy hour show, and then they were packed. Man, they were packed there. I went back later and had a drink, and they were slammed. So they had a really good weekend. But go check them out, Magnolia Avenue, downtown Auburn. Really cool place to watch the game and all that good stuff. Session Cocktail, appreciate them. All right, well, we'll start to get into this. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll just kind of go through our thoughts and then let's get into questions. We'll give people time to get in here, log some questions. We'll stay here and answer as many as we can. I mean, outside of staying here too long, but if we're still here, in an hour and we got questions rolling in, and I'll try to stay and I'll try to answer as many as we can, even if somebody has to pop off. So I don't want to cut people off. If you want to hop in and get a question in, don't leave early. Well, what do you guys want to talk about? I don't know. Cole, we can start with you and give sort of your, you've had less than 24 hours to think about it, but what'd you think about the game? We'll start with just the game.
I thought it was a good offensive game for Auburn, which is a weird thing to say after a game like that. I thought Peyton Thorne had his best game in an Auburn uniform. I'm really glad that I got out in front of this a little bit on the film room last week, and it was met with a lot of controversy, and that's fine. We're going to have stuff that does that when we give our opinion. So it's still my opinion. I felt like it was going to put Auburn in danger at some point. That I have a big philosophy difference with the way that they call offense sometimes. And I think it gets them in trouble. Now, I want to say I do understand why Freeze and his offensive staff does things the way that they're doing things, because if you try to revert back to the offense you were in a year ago, you're going to have the same result. 6 wins probably. So at some point you got to open things up. You've got to get the passing game going if you want to ever advance the program. And I think that's exactly what they're trying to do. And I can appreciate that. But you do have to be smart about it. And I felt for 3/4 of that game, they were very smart about it. 3/4 is not going to get it done when your margin for error is very small. Now, I do want to say this. The margin for error was small last year, but I felt like it was small because of lack of talent at certain positions and depth. This time around, I don't think that's the case so much. Now that these freshmen are starting to come on, Jay Crawford played every single snap of the game, by the way, at corner. I think he was targeted once or twice. You have some guys coming on. You're starting to get better. Depth is looking better at all the positions. Offensive line is one of the deepest ones you got. Wide receiver, I think that they're getting much better. I think that Keandre Lambert-Smith's an NFL guy. I think you have players now. So I don't think could it be better? Sure. But I think you have enough. And now the margin for error is different. I think it goes back to fundamentals and some things that they're allowing to happen that make the margin for error small again.
But like, I don't even want to have this conversation again. I don't even want to do it. We've done it for 3 weeks. Like, we can talk about the game if you guys want to talk about the game. But at what point do we just keep having the same conversation about margin of error? And I'm not saying on you, Cole, like just in general. We talk about margin of error. There's some good, there's some bad. They make mistakes at the wrong time. We can talk. I feel like talking about the games, if it's a one-game aberration, okay. But it's long become a trend now.
Yeah.
And so to me, like the more important question is it actually going to get fixed? Do you actually believe? Are we going to talk about it like it's going to get fixed? Like, are we going to talk about it like they'll just go into the off week, or they'll go into this week, they'll fix a few things, and then they'll come back the next week, right? And they'll have a better game plan or whatever it might be. Or are we to the point where we've seen enough and go and we say that's the question is, do you actually believe?
Well, I
that they
understand
can
why
play disciplined football for a long enough time.
I understand why you're frustrated, and my frustration is similar, but not the same. Mine is because I could write a book with all the positive things I saw.
Yeah, I'm with you too. Like they absolutely played great not great. They played really good for 50 minutes. Yeah.
Right. You could write a book with the positive things you see on both sides of the ball, yet you find a way to lose the game again. And my goal, of course, is to pinpoint that and why the main what was the turn? What was the reason? What was the decision that made it go that way? That kind of stuff. Alan, I want to get your thoughts too. I'm sorry I didn't mean to cut
No, you're good. You guys go ahead.
Go ahead, Alan. You're up.
No, I mean, I think you're both in the vein of something that's very true in that there were some. This is probably the best 50 minutes Auburn has played post Iron Bowl. I would think 2023.
Yeah, no doubt.
And very similar to that game, it obviously ended in a way that was very gut wrenching for the fan base and for the team, the coaching staff, everybody involved. Right.
Right.
So if you're looking for a positive. Let's narrow it down a little bit, but I thought the game plan for the large part made sense. I liked how they slowed things down to a degree to make sure that they got into probably what was a better play. They did more check with me than they've been doing as far as letting Peyton Thorne kind of make some checks at the line some. And I don't think that was against Peyton. I think that had more to do with the fact that Oklahoma's defense is the best that they've played to this point. And so he wanted to make sure that he had a really good game plan for them. And I thought ball control was the best way to kind of take advantage and wear down that defense. And they did that. When they were on schedule and on time, Auburn's offense was really, really good at times. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't miscues and mistakes. But for the most part, minus, the goal line stand there, they probably should have kicked the field goal and or run a different play. I wasn't opposed to the 4th and 1 going for it. I was opposed to the fact that you haven't run Wildcat with Sam Jackson all year, and then you decide to do that on the goal line where everything moves faster and it's more condensed. So I didn't love that. I thought they got too cute there.
For the record, I was for kicking a field goal.
Yeah. I mean, that early in the game, right, I take the points most of the time. But again, I could understand, like, if you're an analytics guy and you're looking at the book, it probably says go for it, right? I don't know that. We would probably need to get a copy of the book to know exactly what it says to do in that situation. But I didn't hate it. I just probably would have gone for the points. But beyond that, in the first half, realistically, you're a missed field goal at the end of the half of really playing a very clean game. And in the second half, the third quarter, you swap a few possessions, but you continue on with the same philosophy that you've employed the entire time, same game plan, and you're up 21-10 at the end of the third. And you have this game in control. And then down the stretch, where I have issue, it was not necessarily the play calling more than it was the game management. If your quarterback is not necessarily on the same page as you as far as understanding that you want to run the football right there, call a timeout. Make sure that you put a design run play on. Don't give him the RPO. And I understand, look, there are some wonderful arguments as to why you continue to utilize the RPO the way they have. And you saw it work for the first three quarters. But if you are concerned or worried at all about turnovers, or you're trying to bleed clock, why not just run duo? Why not run outside zone? Why not just take the RPO out of the equation? I know they have it in their design run game. Just call that if you're worried about Peyton making a decision there and not burning clock.
Why not? That's my question too. Why wouldn't you?
I think if I'm trying to be in the head of Hugh Freeze here, my guess is I'm going to continue to run with what has worked for me in this game. I'm not going to deviate from the plan. I trust my fifth-year senior quarterback to execute. And then when it didn't necessarily take shape the way that it needed to, I felt like that argument on the sideline or a disagreement, whatever it was,
that's heated.
Peyton got a little bit rattled coming out of that. And the offense never really settled back in beyond that point. I think they had a couple good runs by Jarquez, but they were just out of sync moving forward. And so that's kind of where the game fell apart. And it's unfortunate. These things happen. But the major positive, and Cole, you hit on it, is the number of freshmen that contributed in that game. You had big receptions from Malcolm and Cam. You had contributions from DeMarcus Riddick, who played, I think, 6 tackles, 5 solo, 1 sack. The most unheralded recruit that we had in the entire class, our safety out of Alabaster, made multiple plays in that game. And he shouldn't be unheralded anymore. This kid is a starter, and he's potentially all freshman SEC this year. I mean, he has really played above his star ranking. And then you had several sophomores that contributed all game long. Keldrick Falk, another really good game from him. Kayan Lee gave up some plays there at the end, but I thought overall, for the most part, he was in pretty good position.
Just too critical. I mean, he had a defensive. Now, the defensive pass interference, they still held them to the defensive credit. They still held Oklahoma from the 2 to a field goal, which was massive. So really, probably didn't end up hurting them almost. And then, of course, gave up the 60-yard bomb.
Yeah, gave up the 60-yard bomb. But all that being the same, Auburn's defense still only gave up 20 points. If you just don't have that pick 6 at the very end, Auburn wins that game 21-20. But
not even 20, really 7. I mean, their other field goal, Auburn had no choice to go for it on downs. They only gave up 3 yards, and Oklahoma kicked a field goal. I mean, you really gave up 17 points and 280, 290 yards. I thought the defense played really well.
They did. I mean, if you look at the box score, DJ Durkin did his job.
Yeah.
It was a depleted wide receiver core for Oklahoma. They were starting a freshman quarterback. You would have anticipated that Auburn would have been a good matchup for them.
Yeah.
But you still have to do it. You still have to go out there and execute. Yeah. And I thought that they did that.
I agree. Somebody talked about the in-helmet communication. Yes. That's what makes – somebody just asked that question. That's what makes what happened at the end of the game so much more egregious, especially the drive where we're talking about where it was Jarquez Hunter 22-yard run, pass, and you're like, what's going on? Specifically the one where Hugh Freeze lost his mind.
Yes.
On the sideline, which I just did not love. I did not love that. I did not love that at all. You know how to coach Peyton at this point, and he has played so well, and that's your reaction. I hated that reaction. I'm just going to be honest with you. Hated it. I thought the game that you're still winning, you're in a high pressure situation. Deal with it on the sideline. Like, have the discussion. But these outbursts and the berating of the quarterback out in the open, especially when he's played so well, man, I just didn't love that. And more specifically, because I think you know how Hank Brown, I think you know how these guys need to be coached and reacted to. And I didn't love that. And you turn around and you have the pick happens the next drive. But I didn't love it. You even saw Jesse Stone come over there. Did you see him standing there? I don't know if it showed on TV. That to me was like Jesse Stone coming over and trying to bring the temperature of that whole thing down. Like, let me hear what's being said. And Thorne was saying something back. But yes, there isn't in the communication. It's very easy to just communicate. Hey, Peyton, we're running the ball. No checks, no reading, nothing that's normally in the offense that I would allow you to make an adjustment on. Nothing. We're just going to run right here, or we're going to throw right here, one or the other. But man, simplify it a little bit, and you don't have that. And the other thing we don't know on the one to Keandre, is the one that stood out.
Right.
I'm curious. I really still don't. Peyton described that after the game that he saw soft coverage, so I guess he has the option, and that very much looked like he saw soft coverage. So I guess Keandre should have seen soft coverage and run the stop. Keandre ran, I think, like a stutter and go, so he was running an actual route.
Yeah,
he just ends up running deep, and so that's another thing though. What if Peyton read it right, and what if Keandre didn't read it right? So who are we mad at?
and on that situation, you don't know. And realistically, those kind of things happen when you have a quarterback and a wide receiver who have, I mean, Keandre got here, what, May, June-ish?
Yeah.
So those things are ironed out over time as far as being on the same page with your wide receiver. You can expect that kind of thing to happen. It just, you hate that it had to happen in those critical minutes. And that's when it happened.
Well, listen, I think I can. So the whole reason I made a big deal out of that Malcolm Simmons throw last week, I put it on Twitter. I wanted to make a big deal out of it, honestly, because I do have a philosophical disagreement with some of those things. Now, you probably heard me say before, don't ever open the door for trouble. Don't even leave it cracked open, right, Alan? I mean, you know, you've been in the coaching world, the playing world. You understand.
Yeah.
If you open the door for trouble, it will bust through. All right. And what I'm referring to in this instance is sometimes there are decisions that are better made by the offensive play caller or the head coach rather than the quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't care how good or smart the quarterback is. And I think Peyton Thorne's very smart. I think he handles his checks really well. I think Hank Brown did for the most part. But there's going to be times in the game when he's going to think differently than the head coach will. And it doesn't necessarily make him wrong, but it might put you in more of a risky situation because he thinks he can go make that play. And then the coach goes, no, I kind of got a trust issue with that. I don't know if you can do that. I've seen you screw it up before. Let me handle it. That's what I think Freeze is not doing. I don't know that. That's just my guess from watching it and rewatching it. I don't think he's stepping in and saying, nope. That's not what I want. I want this. He's going, this is the play call. You know how to read it. Go do it.
That's what it felt like.
And sometimes it just opens the door for trouble. And I just, that goes way against my philosophy. And that doesn't mean I'm going for Gus and conservative and throwing a screen on 3rd and 18. That doesn't mean that. Sometimes it might, but it doesn't. That's not what I mean. I mean, I argued that the Malcolm Simmons throw last week was a bad throw because they were on their own 27. If you go and look at my live game blog, I said the throw to I can't even remember. There was a deep shot taken, and you're on your side of the 50. And I said, hey, great job. I think I called for it beforehand. Like, this is a great place to take a shot. Whereas when you're on your own 27 and behind the 8 ball,
not a great shot.
Don't prefer that. So, listen, Justin, I don't really love the way he lit into Peyton, but he did. There is a like a screenshot or whatever that SEC Network or something got of him like grabbing his helmet and like putting his head on him and going, "Yes, that was it."
Earlier in the game, yeah.
So yeah, if you're gonna berate a guy, you definitely got to praise him. You praise him twice more than you berate him, right?
But you can't berate him and then come out after the game and go, "Yeah, our players and coaches are feeling the pressure." Well, yeah, I guess so.
So
Like,
again,
you're helping create that pressure to me when you react in those ways.
So again, you're opening the door for trouble, right? Because you put it in his hands. If he screws it up, it's on you at the end of the day. Wouldn't you rather bet on yourself and go, all right, in this situation, Hugh Freeze, make the call, nobody else. And then if it's on me, it's on me. I know it is. I can live with that. And I don't have to throw it off on anybody. Not that he is. I wouldn't say he's throwing it off. I think he's explaining what's happening. Truly. But I think you need to fix what's happening in those situations. That's just my philosophy. He's going to look at it and go, no, I mean, the play was there. Like many people on Twitter told me, hey, Cole, that play was there. You're an idiot.
Sure.
Okay, it's there. Right. You didn't make it.
Yes. Malcolm had a step. It's more about risk and reward and weighing the averages of what's going to happen. And, I'll give Hugh Freeze a lot of credit. I thought after the game, he shouldered the responsibility more than at any other point I've ever heard him. I don't know if he pays attention to what people. I don't think if he cares what people think. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about how he's handled the media and stuff lately, and sort of what he said. But I thought he came out. He said about Peyton's pick 6. He said I shouldn't have put him in that position.
So he does understand it then.
Oh, he took the. Now here's the important thing. Whatever happens behind the scenes, let them have those conversations. But in public, in the media, like he said, he very much shouldered how that game transpired late and said, I've got to do a better job of getting our team over the edge when we have a chance to win a game. I thought the kids handled things with maturity. I thought they were played hard. I thought they played well. He said, I've got to make sure Peyton, understands the situation better, and we should have had runs there. When talking about really that possession right there where you run and then you throw and that one. He said, I have to be clear with Peyton on what we're trying to do at that moment in the game. We have to run the football and milk the clock and take as much time off as we can. We're up 2 scores. That possession stands out for sure. And then he got to talking about needing more points in the game. But we have a 2-score lead. He says protecting the football, running the clock is a priority. We didn't handle it very well. But he absolutely said that, whether he believes it or not, but publicly he protected his player and said that's on me to communicate better.
No, I mean, I think that's fair. I don't have any fault with the way that Hugh handled it after the game. Again, Justin, I read those same comments and thought, okay, this is very different from last week. And even last week, he did say at times, like, I have to do better. I have to coach this team better. I mean, he had some ownership in there, even though there were some quotes that I think a lot of people that cover the team or maybe the fans that read some of those quotes would have wished he'd have said a little bit differently. This week was very different to me, and I'm with you. I give him credit for that. You're right, and this is the continued same song, different verse, right? Now, this was a better verse. This was a show improvement verse, but the end result was all the same, and maybe even more infuriating because you played so well for 50 minutes. And the Auburn fan base is so starved for a signature win to latch onto, to believe in, to continue to cultivate faith, and it just bottomed out. And I think now we go, 2 Athens next week?
That's correct, Alan.
Go to
point underdogs.
23.5 point underdogs.
Which, just perspective-wise, it's the same point spread that Mississippi State went to Texas with.
Right.
That kind of doesn't feel great.
No, it doesn't. Not if you're being viewed in the same vein. But Auburn's history in Athens is probably being taken into account there some because it's been bad for probably the last 10 times we've been to Athens. I mean, I can't remember what was it when Kerryon Johnson and Sean White played on one arm?
16.
16. That's the last time I can remember.
And Auburn was better than Georgia that game. Still lost.
it even being close when we
It's been
played
a
them
lot
in
of
Athens.
blowouts.
Yeah. So it's it doesn't get any easier from here, that's for sure. This felt like one you had to have. There are other games. Look, I still contend. Now I'm not predicting Auburn to win, but there's still winnable games on Auburn's schedule. I'm not a huge believer in Missouri. I continue to say that they're not as good as where they're ranked. Vanderbilt, even though they have Diego Pavia and Jerry Keel, that's one you can get. Louisiana Monroe is gettable. I don't know about the rest of them.
Well, that's the crazy thing. And Zach, anybody that asks a question, feel free to pop up and we'll just roll through them. But I wrote that if they can build on Saturday somehow,
Right.
some way, they can absolutely beat Missouri, Kentucky, or Texas A&M, Vanderbilt, La Monroe. They could win all those games. Like now, the probability would say they're not, obviously, because of what we've seen.
Sure.
But they've shown enough that you're like, if they play, it goes back to that question. If they play clean, but I have no idea if that's just at this point too much to ask of these teams. But I said the biggest thing is the team's got to stay together because you're starting to reach a boiling point, I think, of you're about to go on the road for a month and you've
Yes.
lost 2 in a row, you've lost 3 of 5. Georgia's not going to look great. That's going to be a tough one. You're going to hit a point. It just is. It's not an indictment on it. It just is what it is. It's human nature. You're going to reach a point where you're going to really have to hope that these kids stay together. Not just for a lot of various reasons. I'm not even going to talk about all, but just as a team, you're going to have to hope they stay together if you want any chance of turning it around. Because I do think there's some good things that happened on both sides. But if they start to lose a little bit of faith, you can forget it. You can forget any chance of trying to turn the corner if they don't stick it out.
Well, and especially, and then Cole, I want you to jump in here in this day and age of the transfer portal, right? Once the season goals start to kind of go out the window, if this team isn't bought in and they're not believing necessarily in this coaching staff, you're going to have guys who are going to have one eye to the transfer portal. And that's a really difficult spot to be in. So it's going to be interesting to see what Hugh's message is to the team this week, how he's able to communicate to them. And look, they played on an emotional high for this Oklahoma game. They came out.
They did.
Can you do that 2 weeks in a row? And that's really difficult. When you leave it all on the field the way that they did, to turn back around and now play somebody who you know is going to be motivated coming off that Alabama loss. Can you get up for another emotional high to play a game that is, I mean, it's your rival beyond Alabama. There is no other rival in the same stratosphere as Georgia. So it's a really big week to me, because if you can go out there in Athens and not get blown out, if you can play close, if you can do what you've done in some of these other games where you muck it up a little bit. Now, granted, they should have done more than muck it up against Cal and Arkansas. They should have won those games. But if you can play competitively and continue the trend that you play, because look, they should have had 2 turnovers when Peyton got his arm hit and he fumbled. Like, him recovering that fumble was miraculous.
Yeah,
Like,
Wild.
Like, give him credit for that, because I've never seen a quarterback get strip sacked and then turn around and recover it for a 5-yard gain.
I still wondered, was I not crazy in thinking that could have been an incomplete? Why did I mean?
No, I thought so. I watched
forward?
it again today doing the play script. I thought it was definitely incomplete, but
So his arm wasn't going forward yet, I thought, when the ball initially came loose. Now,
it was worth a look. That's for sure.
It was definitely worth a look. I don't think he was all the way forward yet, and the trajectory, like when he got hit, just carried it forward.
Yeah.
But I'm with you that it shocked me they didn't stop it. Now, I think we also ran a play pretty quickly thereafter to make sure that they didn't stop it either.
Sure. And here's the other thing that's frustrating. Auburn actually got a lot of breaks as far as calls go, which is.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like they haven't gotten great breaks in previous games that they've lost. This one, I felt like they got some very nice breaks. Obviously, the pass interference on Caden Lee in the back of the end zone, that was questionable, but got some breaks. And I think Freeze has actually pointed that out for, like, man, if we could just get a break. Like, we weren't getting any of those. The ball was not bouncing our way. I felt like it did in this game. That makes it even worse.
Yeah.
I 2 things, and we probably need to take some questions, but number one, there is something about Hugh Freeze that I am interested in finding out this coming week against Georgia. These bigger games like this where, okay, 23-point underdog, you are outmatched. I don't speak in absolutes very much because it gets you in trouble.
Sure.
But I can pretty much feel very confident in saying Georgia is better all around, talent-wise, than Auburn.
Oh,
Okay?
yeah.
Right. When Hugh Freeze approaches this game as a play caller, I think he approaches it very much differently. I think he does pull back on the RPOs. I think he does pull back on the responsibility for Peyton. He does some of those things. Now, you might be too outmatched in this game for it to even show up, for it to even be noticeable. But I would argue that's why he was in the games against Alabama and Georgia a year ago, whether it be him or Philip Montgomery that was calling those plays in those games. They have a different approach. So I think when they go into a game like Arkansas and Cal, maybe even Oklahoma to an extent, they go, our stuff's going to work. I know it will. And then they get out there and they have an issue down, along the way somewhere trying to execute some of the things that they think will work. I think it might be a little different. Now, I also want to see this. This is going to be totally wild, what I'm about to say. Is it possible that this team plays a little looser on the road? I can hear the crowd when I'm walking through. It's like they're waiting for disaster, right? And you can, if you're on the field, I promise you can feel it too. They're waiting for disaster to strike when Peyton Thorne's at quarterback.
Mm.
And there's a little bit of that.
That's a pressure cooker, dude. That is a pressure cooker for everybody in an Auburn uniform and in an Auburn coaching attire. It's a pressure cooker. I'm just curious. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be very wrong on that.
Well, we'll find out. That's for sure. All right, let's get some questions. The only other point I'd make to what you said about playing about those big games, the flip side is I almost feel like the way some of the play design, some of the schemes that Hugh Freeze runs, some of the stuff, I feel like it's susceptible to all of it. It is good enough stuff to beat to have success at times against Bama and Georgia and a really good OU defense. But there's also something going on that is making it so bad that you lose to Cal and Maryland and New Mexico State and Arkansas and almost lose to Cal again last year and have a field goal on the board in College Station. Like, I feel like it's a little bit of everything. I think there's stuff in there and well-designed stuff that's allowing you to even trick up Bama, Georgia, and find success. But there's clearly something else that's going on that if you're not consistent enough or if you're not all the way dialed in, there are gaps for mistakes to happen or however you want to describe it, that's allowing you to also lose a bunch of these games you shouldn't. All right. Well, Sam's starting us off with a really easy question. How do you see the season playing out and the consequential attrition and recruiting effects of your vision for the rest of the year? I'll let y'all answer recruiting. Nobody knows how the season's going to play out. You can try to guess based on sort of the trends. You could sort of say based on what you've seen, you could probably take a pretty good guess. Like I said, a lot depends, I think, on the players staying engaged and together. Assuming they do that, I think you can build on some things and still get to if you got to beat La Monroe and Vanderbilt, that gets you to 4. I mean, now that you've lost to Oklahoma, you have to beat Missouri or Kentucky on the road, one of them. And then let's just say you're not going to win 2 of 3 on the road. Let's say you're just going to win one of those. Then it means you have to beat Texas A&M. So it's La Monroe, Vanderbilt, and then let's just say Missouri, Kentucky, A&M. You have to win 2 out of 3, no questions. That's tough to deal with. When it comes to attrition, we don't know. It's too early to start getting into portal and who might leave, and it's way too early to know. A lot of stuff goes into that. So it's just too early to start getting into that. You could probably talk about recruiting more so than you could talk about potential roster attrition.
Yeah, so I don't want to get too much into recruiting on this show. We'll keep it football, but I will say this. I think if a lot of fans got to come down there with me and Jeffrey and Christian Clemente and Caleb Jones and got to actually see how these recruits are reacting as they're walking out and leaving, I think you'd go, now how is that possible? They don't seem to care that much. Like they do. It's the commits they get very upset about it, like a fan would. That's how they take it right now. The guys that are committed to Auburn, they do take it that way. They don't like watching Auburn lose. But it's interesting the conversations that are going on. They're going, man. I mean, there's a lot of talk about Riddick down there, right? Like, wow, he came out of nowhere, had a huge day. There's a lot of talk about Jay Crawford. Like, I know one corner was like, man, I don't even think he got targeted, and he was played the whole game as a freshman.
Yeah.
That's not even us interviewing them. That's just them talking and like overhearing what they're saying about the game. They're not so much talking. They're not walking out of the stadium because when I go down from the press box to the recruiting lounge, the only way is to go outside the stadium, which I dread, right? I totally dread that because I get to walk through with all the fans that are disgruntled, and that's not the most fun thing to do. And all the fans that are walking out when you're doing that are going, unbelievable. This is great. Oh my God. It's constant. And then you get in the recruiting lounge, they're like, man, did you see Riddick? Oh my God, Jay Crawford. I could see my, that's what they care.
Cole sounds like Boomhauer from King of the Hill right now.
I swear.
He said, I swear that we cut out and then we get, I swear.
You can't have nothing. You can't have a win.
Nothing nice, Cole.
You can't have internet.
But it goes back to just almost a youthful bliss, and I don't say ignorance to some degree. It's been like that even going back. I mean, for Jeffrey's covered it longer than I have. 2010. I mean, recruits are always like that. They don't worry about it as much because they can fix it. I will come in and fix it. Our group will come in. I'm not there yet. Wait till I get there. Yeah. What can I do? There's always that's just how they generally view a lot of it.
No, I think probably the biggest thing, if you're looking at it from the recruiting vein, is the negative recruiting that's about to ramp up. Yeah. I mean, it's already existing now, but you can get around it. You've sold them on a long-term vision, like you guys have talked about it, and they're looking at things from a different lens. And it's really hard to play the schedule game. You still don't you've got 5 data points on the entire season. There's still teams that haven't truly been tested yet, so you don't know what they're really made of. I think we have a clearer picture now than we did at week 1, that's for sure. But it's hard to predict how Auburn's going to finish up. But I will say this, I do believe if the product doesn't continue to improve on Auburn's end, to keep this class together, you're going to find out how good of a recruiting staff this is and how strong Auburn's NIL is. And remember that everybody else has money too. So how you structure deals, what you're offering, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a class finish 3-9, 4-8 and finish inside the top 10, not in year 2. I think at a minimum, Auburn's got to get to 5-7 to stay where they are and to hold this class together. But again, I could be wrong. I mean, this is a new era, right?
Yeah.
This is an opportunity to earn money. This is an opportunity to play on a contract. This is very different from probably most of my history as far as evaluating this and reading trends in recruiting. It is a very different time. And so we're about to find out in real time. This will be a very interesting case study if things don't get significantly better on the field and you can't sell certain facets of your program. Now, my hope is that they do, and that we're able to have a different conversation in several weeks from now. But as of today, it's also hard to predict the emotional losses too, right? Like if I had told you before the season that Auburn loses this game against Oklahoma, I don't think anybody on this panel would have batted an eye. But to lose that game in the way that you did and to have already lost 2 games that you were predicted to win,
right?
It just furthers the emotion of that. And so that's the unpredictable part of this.
Everything compounds. I wrote about that in the 3-2-1. Like when Freeze talks about the pressure, all that stuff just compounds. I mean, every loss, it compounds. Every mistake, it compounds. And so that's why at some point you got to try to kind of right that ship somehow, some way. Hayden says KLS, the best receiver we've had since Keandre Lambert-Smith had 77 or so yards, a touchdown, really nice catch, 77 yards and a touchdown, which puts him at 6, I think, on the season. Which, yeah, so I mean, he's best receiver since.
Seth, probably.
Seth Williams.
See, but I think, since, he's, in my opinion, way better than Seth Williams. I thought Seth was like good 65, 70% of the time. I think Keandre Lambert-Smith's pretty freaking good.
He is.
All the time. Best, like Ikeal's best, to me, is the best overall. Like Duke was really, really talented. I hate we only saw him for 1 year, but Duke was pretty talented. But you didn't see him. It was a little bit different scheme.
I would venture to say that Auburn has 3 receivers right now that are more talented than Seth Williams.
I think that's on the table for sure. 2 very early in their career right now.
At this point right now, Perry Thompson, you never know. He could take it another, there's other guys too, but 3 right now. Malcolm Simmons, I have seen enough from him to say that guy's dynamic. Cam Coleman had his best game, I thought, this week.
I thought on that touchdown pass that Malcolm hauled in, he made a hell of an adjustment on that ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did.
I mean,
yeah,
like that, and that's not me throwing shade at Peyton, but he had to adjust and move to his outside shoulder. You know what I mean? On a side adjustment in mid route, dude. I mean, that was a hell of an adjustment by him.
I think Peyton laid it out there pretty good. I think he almost overran it because he's so fast. I mean, he is that fast. That's how hard. It's interesting. I got to talk to the catapult guy. If y'all don't know what catapult is, that's what the guys wear. Like, it looks like a bra almost, but it's got a GPS tracker that tracks their miles per hour. And you'd be surprised how many guys do not run their full speed throughout the game, and that tracks that. As coaches are loving this technology because they can see how hard guys are pushing it. I don't know what Malcolm Simmons is, but he only has 1 speed.
I mean, even on that punt, man, where he absolutely blistered the Oklahoma player, and he doesn't
even understand how to settle down. He doesn't even get it. Like, it's full speed all the time.
You know what? And you'll live with that from him. You'll live with mistakes when they're playing that way.
Sure. I'll move on to the next question. If I had to say best all-around receiver since, I'm just sitting here thinking in my head, going back to years, and I know there's been some talented guys, but I sort of think that I almost go all the way back to Courtney Taylor. I thought Courtney Taylor was a really good all-around. I thought he could do a lot, and he did it for a few years. Like, I thought Aroma should do Minor. They had flashes. I thought Courtney Taylor could kind of do a little bit of everything. Go over the middle. He was tough, physical. I thought he could do a lot. Like, Duke was really good, but I think Courtney Taylor's if underrated.
Real quick, if you're talking about upside, Darius Slayton, I mean, he's been good in the pros or whatever.
Yeah, he should have been utilized so much better. Yeah.
From a playmaking standpoint, Ryan Davis, that was a guy. I mean, when was the last time Auburn had a playmaker like that?
Yeah. Right. Those 2 guys found their niche in that offense.
They did.
He says, what's the right balance of blame to have on Hugh and Thorne? Thorne has to know and do better in that spot, but Hugh has to know what he can and can't handle at this point, right? Very fair question. A very fair approach. I think you could make the argument for both. I mean, Thorne's played a lot of football. It kind of goes back to that Cal game where we talked about Peyton being coached to throw to Cam one-on-one, but should he know better in the situation and not throw it on, you're like, well, but if he's coached to do it, you're like, well, yeah, but if it's not there, it kind of goes both ways. I mean, if the play's called and he has the freedom to make a check and he looks out there and sees something that they've been coached on, hey, if they do this, you can check to this. I get down in distance. So I don't know. I think ultimately that comes back on coaching. Ultimately, you can make the argument that Thorne should know better, but at the end of the day, it's going to be coaching on, hey, remember down in distance. Hey, remember late fourth quarter up 11. Let's stick to the run. I mean, I just think that stuff has to be communicated. But Thorne, you could probably place a little bit of blame on there too. He is the one throwing the ball, and he did make a check. And you could, if you want to say he should have known better, I'm not going to completely disagree with that. I mean,
Well, there's something to be said about the way Peyton handled the play. I mean, you have understanding the where you are in the game. The best thing for him to do in that situation is not rush it, just eat it. Take the sack and live to play the next down. But if you're Hugh Freeze, you go, now that's a possibility, right? And I've heard my dad say in a game, now we could throw the ball here, but there's 3 things that could happen, and 2 of them are bad. So that ratio is not favorable, right?
Right.
So from a coaching standpoint, is you have to understand your personnel. I mean, in that situation, it's hard to think about it that quick, but you go, now I think I would rather take the ball out of his hands here. And it's no offense to him. I just have evidence that he's not maybe perfect on these downs. Take the ball out of his hands and give it to my defense. Set them up for success instead of what happened. And
Sure.
I think Brent Venables understood that concept very well. And that's why they toned it down in the second half and said, all right, we're going to see if Auburn makes a mistake, because they're gashing us right now. And there's not much we can do about it because we don't have much of an offense. Our best bet is to stay safe, don't turn the ball over, and we might have a chance at the end of this one. And guess what? They sure did.
No, and Venables gave Peyton zero respect on that play. I mean, they showed a zero blitz, brought it, and then made sure they dropped a man behind to bait him. What you would have loved to have seen him do is go to the outside there, down the sideline for risk mitigation if you were going to try to throw it. I didn't love the play call just because you knew what Venables was going to do at that point in the game. And so I lay blame at both. I mean, Peyton is a fifth-year senior quarterback. And yes, I know he's got tendencies, but at some level, he's gotten you to this point. And you have to have trust in a guy that's gotten you to that point to a degree. But again, the head coach is calling it, right? Like, if you don't want him to throw the ball there, that's your call ultimately. You're the one making $6.5 million a year. Ultimately, the buck stops with you. But, I mean, I think I hold both accountable in that play. It's 50-50.
you're talking about the pick 6 specifically? Is
Yeah.
that what y'all are talking about? Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's the pick 6, and then there's the possession before that they threw on first and second, and at least the key, for sure, the 2nd and 10 was the one where Hugh lost his mind. The other part of this, man, is I haven't played quarterback at the FBS level.
Sure.
Basically, nobody on our board probably has either. Like that, and Hugh Freeze hasn't either, by the way, played quarterback. Like that, I cannot even imagine what it's like to play quarterback at that level.
It's intense.
The speed of stuff, like it is so unbelievably hard. And I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying it is. And so, like, if we're looking at quarterback made a mistake, but also we could also say the coach should have communicated. I'm going to lean on coaching, because in the speed of things when you're out there, if you're the quarterback and you're trying to read and make the right check, or even the pick 6, my understanding of that play is as soon as that linebacker blitzes, which he absolutely did, Peyton's eyes move to the receiver. That guy did a great job he absolutely blitzed, and then he absolutely got out of it. Helped, by the way, if you watch that play, what's funny and unfortunate, Jeremiah Wright blocks him, punches him so hard that he basically sped up the process of that guy dropping back into coverage. That guy blitzed, and Jeremiah Wright punched him at the same time as that guy was about to take a step back, and you can see him stumbling backwards because Wright punched him so hard. It was kind of an unfortunate thing. But Peyton sees him blitz. His eyes move to the receiver. He's got a guy coming off the edge straight at him. He knows he's got to get rid of the football, and the guy just drops back. You can't see him behind Jeremiah Wright, and it's a pick. That's a freaking – I almost want to give Oklahoma a bunch of credit for just dialing up a perfect call.
And somebody asked about why they go empty in that situation, which is something I'm asking too, and I've already gone back and looked at the play several times, trying to figure out maybe why they did that. And I think the answer is you have to find the answer in other points in the game to see what they did on those downs, on those situations, 3rd and short, 3rd and medium. What did Oklahoma do? And I saw one time they got in the exact same 6 across. It's like a 6 down, but it's 2 backers walked up in gaps.
Yeah.
So they got a look there, and they brought them. So they thought, well, they're going to do that again. And they got the same look. And they were like, they're probably on the sideline going, yes, that's it. That's what we want to see. And
Yep.
then he drops them because, Brent Venables is no dummy. He doesn't have tendencies on defense. Why their defense is good.
Yeah.
So it's a good – I want to give credit to them for that. It was a good play call on defense.
And yes, definitely a great play call. And if you're looking for good young defensive coordinators, by the way, Zach Alley at Oklahoma, formerly of Jacksonville State, keep your eye on him. Okay, that kid's he's extremely bright and got a very bright future.
No doubt.
All right, the Halo 2 King dropping in with is Freeze in danger of losing the team now that he has lost the fan base. Well, that's let's first address whether or not you think he's lost the. Obviously, this person thinks he has. I actually asked this question on the board. There's a thread. I responded. I said, are there actually people saying that he's like move on, move on, or
there are a few.
There are a lot of mad people. I don't know that there's a lot of people that have firmly figured out I am absolutely today move on. I don't think people are quite. They're really mad.
I think it's like of the 100% of the fan base. I think it's about 0.05 right now.
But
I've seen one or two comments. I have seen a couple. Yeah.
Yeah. But I would say I would say I wouldn't say they lost. I would say you got 70. I would say you got 60-70% of the fan base that is thoroughly displeased.
Yeah,
and is somewhere in between. He's not the guy. I don't know if he's the guy. So somewhere in there, I would say the minority of people are like, it's fine, give him time, everything will be okay. That is absolutely the minority opinion at this point.
I would say that's the vocal minority anyway, right? Like if you're taking an actual poll, the numbers might be slightly different because the vocal part of this is always going to get more shine, right?
Yeah, always. Yeah.
But you talk to people, you talk to your friends, you talk to
Sure.
talk to people that aren't on the boards, and those people can give you a pretty good idea of the people that aren't posting of what those of opinions as well. You can get an idea.
Definitely. And that's probably a more fair gauge. But I think what I get the most of is what you just hit on, Justin, is the disappointment laced with anxiety about what is forthcoming for the rest of this year.
That's true.
It's not, again,
laced.
Yes.
That's a strong word, bro. You're right.
I mean, it's difficult, right? Because it's multiple layers to how people are seeing this right now. Because you have looks like a squandered opportunity with 5 straight home games, and you walk away 2-3, and that's the disappointing part. And then you have people that are looking at the future schedule, and they're playing the schedule game in their head. Well, shit, that's a loss to Georgia, Missouri. Kentucky looked good yesterday. We had to play Diego Pavia last year with New Mexico State. That's
Alabama.
not a gimme anymore, right? We've got Alabama. And so that's the other side conversation that's happening here. That's also creating this. If the schedule were different, I think the fan reaction might be different at this point, but it's not. It's an SEC schedule, and it's a difficult one like it always is when you're an Auburn fan. And so it's really hard to be positive at this moment. I think Hugh Freeze is going to have to change the climate somehow. And remember, we started a little bit of this last year, especially coming off being throttled by LSU, and then you lost to Ole Miss, which was a winnable game. I mean, I thought Auburn had a good scheme, good plan that night, and they just didn't execute when they needed to. And you started to see some of this discontent kind of grow within the fan base, except you hit a break in your schedule. You caught Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Arkansas. Everything kind of calmed down at that point.
Yeah.
So you don't catch that same break. Yeah.
I would argue that to the question of losing the team, yeah, it's in question. I mean, that's a fear you're going to have now. But I would argue that I can understand the frustration with Freeze on the field. I absolutely do, and I have it myself with certain things, and I voiced it. But the dude is a recruiter. Okay, that's where he makes his money. That is where he lives.
That's not where he makes his money. He makes his money by winning football games.
Well, not right now.
No, he is paid to win games and
No, I
championships.
know, but he's getting leniency right now because of his recruiting. The reason why it's only 0.05%, if that want him fired right now and not higher, is because of what I'm trying to say is I think they believe in him, man. I really do. I get the sense that his players do, at least the ones that he brought in. And now the ones that have been here, Luke Deal, Eugene Asante, the Culture Council, whatever, they obviously believe in him for a different reason because they're just those kind of guys. And that's why they were picked for that. But the guys he's bringing in were the guys that were playing the hardest on the field.
Yeah.
The freshmen. And, you know, some of the look, they've hit on some of these transfers. Keandre Lambert-Smith, Philip Bleedy. We don't talk much about him. He can play. I mean, they are still playing. There was not a point in that game where I thought that effort was an issue on either side of the ball.
No, they were.
Yeah, no doubt. I think effort's been good every game.
Sure. Yeah. No, and as far as the fan base is concerned, for those that didn't read it, I would suggest you go to our board. Andy Staples put a fantastic post up, kind of comparing or mirroring Auburn's situation to Florida. And for those that don't know Andy's background, he was a player at the University of Florida. So there's some emotional investment there for him, and probably a situation that he monitors relatively closely, other than just being obviously a national media personality. But the thing to watch, if you're wondering about where the fan base is, and I'm with you, Cole, in the fact that recruiting is it takes up all the oxygen with Hugh Freeze right now. It is what he sells, and it's understandable because that's what's being the most successful to this point. But if we get down the end of the season and it's a 4-8 type year and that recruiting class falls apart, I don't know how bought in the fan base will be at that point, because you're right. That is what holds it together right now, is the appearance of the future is going to be brighter regardless of what the on-the-field product is right now. You see some of these freshmen, okay, hold on to that, and then multiply it by another class. So I think the recruiting piece becomes ever more important down the stretch. And Justin's right. He is paid $6.5 million a year to win football games. That is what he has to do.
I'm not disagreeing, by the way.
But to get to next season, I think he's got to hold that recruiting class together. That is a huge piece to me.
Oh, yeah. That's huge.
Yeah. I just think there's a lot of disconnect. I get why fans are all over the place.
Yeah.
On how they feel right now. Like I feel for them, because they look and they see a good recruiting class, or they look out and see an almost win or a close loss to Georgia and Alabama. And then there's the New Mexico. There is something for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So far. So the recruiting thing is just that is, I guess time will tell, but that is just one that I don't know the answer to. When you say, give him time, he's getting talent. Okay. You don't have now 10 losses to Georgia. You've got more talent than New Mexico State and Cal and Arkansas and Maryland. You do. So on one hand, yes, getting better players, I'm all for that. I think everybody would be for better players. But man, like, how much better do you need your team to be to win games?
No, that's a fair question.
You got to be better at quarterback.
But he's good enough to not lose these games.
Sure.
But
you also got to have somebody that can win a game for you.
I thought Peyton was winning that game for him. Like, I thought, like, when we were talking, I was looking at this going, Peyton's the reason they're going to win this game.
I didn't think he was the reason Auburn lost the game, but
you do, yeah. Quarterback.
He also didn't. There's also the argument that he didn't win the game. You know what I mean?
No, I mean he didn't have a Cam Newton moment, right? He didn't have.
Well, that's kind of when I get into that philosophical thing, that's my point. Like, you have to have somebody like that for some of these things to work consistently.
Sure.
This offense really relies on a massive playmaker at quarterback, and Peyton Thorne's just not that guy. Doesn't mean he can't be successful. Doesn't mean he can't win. He's just not this major playmaker. And you have to understand that as your coach. Know your personnel. There's
When
a
you
way.
say that, what do you mean?
What now?
When you say that, what do you mean? When you say a massive playmaker, why do you think the scheme, the offense needs what you're describing? Like, are you talking about they need somebody that can make plays over and above and beyond the scheme, that overcomes the scheme in spite of the scheme? Like, why
No.
is it the scheme, if it's operated? I mean, he would tell you the stuff's there, just throw it, it's there.
No, because when maybe the quarterback doesn't make the preferable read of the 2 or 3 reads that might be on a play, they can course correct because they're so good. Right? We've seen that happen several times with guys like Nick Marshall. We watched Nick Marshall make the wrong read several times at Auburn, and it didn't matter. He still made the play. Cam Newton, there's several. All the good quarterbacks, they can screw up in the beginning of a play and find a way out of it. And I don't know if Peyton Thorne's that guy. And that doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback either. It just means that for what you're asking of them, you don't have the margin of error, for him to not be able to get out of a bad play, if that makes sense.
Well, look, I don't know where do you guys fall on? How confident are you that this thing will get turned around this year, next year? Are you in complete limbo, or?
I
went out on a limb on the board. I went out on a limb. I said, listen, from what I've seen and what I know, as of September 29th, 2024, I don't like what I'm seeing. I've seen enough undisciplined football for a long enough period of time that I don't know how to predict that he's the guy for the job, like long term. Like Auburn's going to settle in and sustain 9 to 10 wins every year. And there's no evidence for me to say at this moment to be confident in saying that, other than maybe a blind faith in the guy. I'm not saying I can't change my mind. I told the board, listen, variables can change and I can change my mind. If I'm trying to look at just straight evidence and you're asking me, what do I think? The evidence doesn't point to having a lot of confidence about consistent sustainability of winning a ton of football games, which is what he was brought here to do. Not go 7-5 and then pop up with a 10. They had that. Gus was doing that. That's why he's not here, is because people got tired of that.
Right. I have just a touch of confidence that.
Don't you bite your tongue, Alan.
Alan, maybe let you go first.
No,
you are too smart. I want to know what you got to say.
I'm really in the middle, Justin. I am, and it's not biting my tongue. I think I've seen enough from a talent acquisition standpoint to make me think he understands that piece, right? And so that's the positive part. The on the field inconsistency, because there have been moments of really good football, but it's the inconsistency that probably gives you pause. And so for that, I'm just really torn, man. Like I honestly don't know. I can't say he's not the guy, and I can't say he is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's not me in any way trying to take a shot at Hugh Freeze by any means. But at some point, you do have to have a proof of concept moment and say, this is where we turned it around. And it hasn't happened yet. Now, I don't know if you give him more time, does that happen in year 3? Does it happen towards the end of year 2? I think we still got a long road to hoe on that. So it's going to be interesting to see. But at this point, the on the field product has been inconsistent. You can't pretend that it hasn't been. But again, the talent acquisition piece is there. So it's just hard, man. It is an incomplete picture. Like if I'm a college professor, this is not an A, B, C, or D. It's an incomplete at this point. And that's kind of where you're at with it.
Yeah, I have just I have a little bit of confidence that he can get it done because of the way his first full class is performing and helping this team right now. It's they're not getting blown out. They're playing. When I look at that and see that Jay Crawford had to play every single snap of the game, like that means something to me. That's a guy that he handpicked, and he said, we're going to make sure we get that guy here. He's going to help us. I believe he's good for what I'm trying to do. And then he goes out there and does it as a freshman. That's good. I like that. Where I start losing confidence is when I do feel like they have an adequate amount of players to win these games, and they're not doing it. So I don't. I mean, nobody has the answer right now,
No.
but I don't know how. I don't know how to gauge it at this point. We're all stuck in the middle now because it didn't turn out. The beginning of the season looked so bad, and that just puts you in this weird middle ground that you didn't
Yeah.
foresee happening. And it's almost. I mean, like you almost had to start over from scratch to start the season because of this passing, if the deficiency that's been at Auburn for so long, the lack of a passing game. That if you don't have, by the way, you're not going to win the big games, no matter how good your roster is. Okay, no matter how good your defense is, it has to happen, and it's going to be an ugly transition. I think trying to get that passing game going. Now you look at the numbers, it's going pretty well actually. How do they turn it into wins though? Where do you pull up and go, all right, passing game's getting better, there's no doubt. But what is the best way that I can find a win?
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I think coming out of the bye in Columbia against Missouri is probably your best shot at getting a win on the schedule in this series of road games. It is absolutely, in my opinion, I think Kentucky's going to be really tough. The way their defense is structured, that is a very tough matchup for us, especially being on the road 3 straight weeks. But coming off a bye, you have an opportunity to scheme up and be prepared for that game. If you can get your guys up, I think Auburn has enough athletes to be effective. And if you watch Missouri, they have given up big explosive plays. Now, the question is, can Kayan Lee have his best game against Luther Burden? Because that's the matchup you got to watch. If you can be effective against him and force Missouri to be a little bit more one-dimensional, then you've got an opportunity to win that game. You saw Boston College do some of that, and that's probably your best shot at getting one.
That's why I said they need to go play. They need to play Georgia competitively. Also,
yes.
They don't need to have not just 3 losses in a row, but if they go in there and just get obliterated, boy,
have you
you're
seen
going to go into
anything?
that bye week just as down as you possibly could be.
Have you seen anything from this team yet that says they will absolutely not have a chance to be close in this game?
If they play like they did against Cal, yeah, they're going to get blown out. You turn the ball over 4 times against Georgia with the quarterback that they've got.
Yeah.
And look, I know he had an off night to start, okay? And he has not played fantastically. But I still think the kid's got elite arm talent, and give him multiple cracks at the apple and give him 4 extra possessions. Yeah. No, you're going to get blown out. So you're going to have to shorten the game. You're going to have to play ball control, and you're going to have to mitigate against error. I mean, your play call it's going to be important for you to do exactly what you did against Oklahoma, which is grind clock, wait to the last second, and then make some adjustments with a check with me to make sure you get into the right play.
I will say the huddling instead of trying to go fast and controlling the clock, I really actually think that helped Peyton Thorne along in this game. I do. I feel like that was good for him. He got to think a little bit more. He got to settle in, and his pocket presence and his body language looked better than I've seen it in a long time. So I credit for that adjustment.
No, I'm with you. Yeah.
We talked about that. It looked clear as day. Just the pace seemed in their control, and it showed.
He definitely, you could tell he was more comfortable with the pre-snap picture that he was getting because he was able to watch that safety rotation a little bit, because Venables does a fantastic job of changing the pre-snap to the post-snap picture. I mean, as good as anybody.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
And I felt like Peyton did a really good job of staying out of danger situations for the most part. I mean, look, every quarterback's going to have a throw in a game where they're like, shit, I wish I could have that back. You know what I mean? That's just what's going to happen.
Right.
But I felt like they had a much better grasp on what Oklahoma was trying to do, and slowing the pace 100% helped.
By the way, another play we don't talk about, right? Another scoring chance. If Cam Coleman doesn't bend the route to the middle of the field.
Oh, yes.
He may score on the play. There's a safety out there, but even if he doesn't, you're inside the 15, and you got that's another scoring chance that literally, for some unknown reason, he just starts running inside towards the numbers.
That was the most emotion I've seen from Peyton Thorne too. Boy, he was pissed about that.
He was.
Yeah. Cam looked like he got lost on the field.
He did, and that's
He
another.
did, yeah.
You talk about growing the passing game. That's a mistake that Cam already look. He looked better than he did against Arkansas. Okay, and it looked like he was running his routes full out. There was no issue there with him dogging it or anything of that nature. He just made a mental bust on the play. That comes through experience.
Right.
And so I think he hopefully won't make that mistake again. And now when that opportunity arises and he gets in that one-on-one, and you saw him capitalize it on it later in the game, right?
Yeah, that's the Cam Coleman. That's the one.
You saw that play down the sideline. You're like, okay, that's the 5-star. That's the guy I've been needing to see. And hopefully the more he continues to understand the offense, the more you're going to see that.
Yeah,
I agree. That's his element too. I mean, that is what he was born to do. I think that's what I put in the live game blog. That is what he was born to do. Oklahoma was willing to give it to them. Oklahoma was willing to give it to them and see if Peyton Thorne could connect. And when he did, they started backing off, and Auburn got to running the ball a little bit. And that's why it gets even more frustrating when you think about that 3rd and 4 and what they could have done so much differently on that situation.
That was a tough one. I also did. And do you want to save this recruiting question for later?
Yeah, let's save that. Let's save that for later.
Tim, great question. Cole's gonna log it in his head. It's gonna log it in his brain. Tim Park.
Yeah, call in Tim later tonight.
Yeah, that's another thing about that 3rd and 4, the pick 6. We were talking about it in real time, Cole, when we were watching. Is I thought they also stayed away from throws like that for large parts of the game. There were deep shots down the sideline. There were some comeback routes. There, I didn't see a ton of trying to drop back or do an RPO and read in the middle of the field and make a throw in a window. I didn't see a ton of that. And you saw early in the game, right, the throw to Keandre Lambert-Smith, almost picked, pretty close, pretty tight play, was incomplete. So I thought they did a good job of sort of staying away from some of those that could be dicey, where if you don't work quick enough and you're late, like anywhere, if they're playing a zone, it could be bad. And then you go, you go to that, which is just, man, it's just like throwing over the middle like that. It's just so congested, but it is what it is.
It's the most difficult part of playing quarterback is making layered, anticipated throws over the middle of the field. And if you're struggling as a quarterback, it's a place you want to stay away from. And if you look at it, like I was kind of looking at a throw chart from where Peyton's been most successful, and it literally has been to the sidelines where it's a little bit clearer to ID one-on-one, ball placement's easier. The game just slows up a little bit. So I think Peyton will continue. Is there anybody on this panel that disagrees with the fact that he's going to be the starter against Georgia? Like I have, I know there were questions that were raised on the board. Should Hank be the starter? I think it's Peyton Thorne going into Georgia.
Yeah.
Now, if Auburn gets blown out, we turn the ball over 4 times, well, then maybe you reopen the door to entertaining Hank Brown again. But
I don't think you go back to Hank until the season's over with. Okay. No. Let me rephrase that. I think you go to Hank when you go, okay, we're officially like,
we're not winning anymore.
We're not going to a bowl.
Yeah.
I got nothing. Peyton gives you the best chance to win. And another huge element that going in that Hugh talked about his experience, it was his legs. I remember pregame Cole and I were talking. I'm like, his legs are going to be, if they're going to have a chance to win, he's going to have to run the ball a little bit today. And what did he end up with? 50. He ended up with, sacks. He had some sacks late. He had about 50 yards rushing in that game. And at halftime, he had 4 different runs for first downs that he, with his legs, picked up 4 different first downs running the football. That element can't be understated with everything going on with the offense. It's pretty important, and it does add a little bit to that. But yeah, he's the guy. He's the guy until he goes out there and it all falls apart. If it all falls apart again, and then you go, okay, well, now I'm just going to literally throw Hank out. And if that means we go 4-8, we go 4-8.
Yeah.
I can use it as some extra time to figure things out going into the offseason.
Yeah. I
think they're there, but they're not there yet.
No, I mean, look at his stat line from yesterday. 21 of 32 for 338. Now take that 50-yarder off at the end.
Yeah.
Okay. And you get 43. You get his 43, excuse me. You get his actual stat. So he threw for over 280. Mm-hmm. 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. That is a winning stat line for the most part. The problem with the pick is it was with pick 6, right? You know what I mean? And just I hate it for that kid. I felt like he almost played up to his max yesterday.
I know it.
You know what I mean? Like I felt like he played up to his max, and it just did not break the right way. And regardless of how anybody feels about Peyton Thorne's play to this point, the kid's a good kid. I wanted to see him get it. I wanted to see him get a victory. You know what I mean?
He's a great kid. And by the way, I banned somebody from the board yesterday. If you come on the board, let me use this as an opportunity. If you come on the board and you trash players and you say like F that guy as a player, like please do that so I can just go ahead and ban you. Like that's not happening.
Right.
And so especially when you get on there and you're trashing Peyton Thorne of all people, talk about his play, talk about any of their play, man. But there's some dudes that are really good people, and Peyton Thorne and Hank Brown's one of them.
Yeah.
Super quality people that you should be happy they're wearing the Auburn jersey because they're seriously quality people. And I'll say another thing, that quarterback room is fantastic. I almost posted it, but I didn't want to. Hank, Peyton, Walker, all those guys get along. There's zero issues. Like Hank and Peyton specifically, there's no issues with the bouncing back and forth. Zero. Last year, couldn't say that. This year, that quarterback room, because of the players, because of their maturity, is fine.
Yeah, I have a strong I don't mean any disrespect at all. I just have a strong disconnect with several of the Twitter fans and even some people on our board who, you know, love and appreciate them for being with us. I just have a disconnect with.
He was just getting to the
fighter,
good part
man.
too.
Oh man!
Wait, you cut out. What'd you say, Cole?
What was the last thing you heard? I swear.
You were on a roll there. Just go right back into it, man. It was good enough to hear it twice.
I have a disconnect with a lot of the fans that take shots at a guy like Peyton Thorne because he's a fighter, dude. He's a fighter, and I respect that. Hey, you got my respect. Okay. I'm gonna criticize your play. I'm gonna do it. That's my job. It's my job to look at this critically, right? And sometimes that means we're gonna criticize the way you play. We might even criticize. I swear, man, I am going to. Somebody's getting a letter.
Start tweeting Elon. Elon will respond. Tweet at Elon. And you got the Starlink, right?
I'm on Starlink now. Which it runs a lot smoother, but I have little hiccups here. But anyway, he's a fighter. I respect him. I just
tough as nails, dude.
I can pull. I can pull for that guy. I really can.
And whether he's the starter at Auburn or not, I still, you know what I mean? Like I just. When you cover this like we do, and specifically you guys talk to these players. A lot of fans that are probably saying some of these things on social media have never met these guys. They have no idea what they're like in real life. And so I would just encourage those that make it personal to not.
You also don't know what goes, but like I'm gonna tell you something. When they did that Sunday team meeting last week, Peyton Thorne got up and spoke, and damn near got a standing ovation because he said, I'm playing for y'all. You know, I'm playing for, he basically saying to everybody, play for you, play for your family. Like, let's turn this around. Like, you just don't know how people look at these players behind the scenes too. And there's a lot of respect there for Peyton. I'm just going to tell you there is.
No, I mean, I believe that wholeheartedly. Now, at the end of the day, and this is the tough part about this, it's still a scoreboard business, right?
Yeah.
And you got to win games. If you're, if you're Peyton Thorne, if you're Hugh Freeze, if you're anybody associated with this team, you got to win. Otherwise, the support is going to continue to wane. But as somebody who is an observer that gets on a podcast at least like 3 different times a week, I wanted to see that kid be successful just because, you know what I mean? Like and then you feel for him in that moment. Like you knew how bad he felt when that pick 6 happened, right? I mean, like if you saw the TV copy at all, you saw him go back and I
felt the same way for sick. I felt the same way for Damari Austin last week.
Yeah. Yep. And I normally don't react, but in the press box when Peyton threw that interception, I was like,
oh, I know. It hurts your feelings.
I said out loud, I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I could not believe that he played so well and that happened. And it was mostly how just terrible that was for the team, but for him.
And listen, I don't know if I cut out when I said it, but I'm going to criticize his play. I'm going to criticize his talent level for the offense. I'm going to do it. That's what
Sure.
we do here. But I don't feel good about you calling him a clown, man. That ain't cool.
No,
He ain't a clown.
No, and you have no place on our board. I'll just tell you that. You don't have to be a subscriber to AuburnLive.com. I don't
care for that.
We don't need you to be a member if you're going to come on and personally insult players. Nope.
We have a lot of people on the board, and they've done well. I actually have been okay with our board this week. It's just a couple people, but no, I mean they have a right to be upset. I want to make that very clear. You have a right to be fired up
fan here
and pissed, right? You have a right. I don't ever want to take that away from you as a fan. You have that right. Sure. You have that right on our board too.
But when it gets personal, and it crosses into what I consider bad faith. When you make bad faith comments and bad faith arguments, which is you have an agenda or you don't want to hear the other side or you aren't even trying to be reasonable, like that's where things go awry. All right, John Robinson, you guys were running up and down the field on us. Looked like we were out of it. Crazy game. Awesome fans down there. Great atmosphere. I wish if we would have lost, we would have been just as disgusted. And I talked to a few OU fans directly after the game that were like, they were like, y'all were kicking our ass. I mean, I don't know how we pulled that off.
No, and look, let's talk about the real thing here in that this was a big game for both coaching staffs. I mean, it had an opportunity to get weird in Norman given the schedule that they've got left.
Mm-hmm.
Just like it has an opportunity to get weird for Hugh down the stretch. So give Brent Venables credit, give Oklahoma credit for winning that game and doing what they needed to do. And that was not an easy win for them to take a freshman quarterback on the road and to win. And that was peak Jordan Hare. From what I could tell from TV,
it was good.
That was peak Jordan Hare. It wasn't like, that wasn't Florida game, 07 or 06, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But
that was a weird game. Yeah.
I think I even wrote in the live deal, like when I think it was the 4th and 10 sack by Jalen McLeod. I said, and that's the loudest I've heard Jordan Hare in a while.
Yeah.
Because they got out to and they were up, and you felt like there was for a consistent stretch they were playing good. You gave fans a chance to believe and start to build a little momentum.
By the way, I see there's a lot of recruiting questions on this show. Jeffrey's currently dropping the official visit interviews right now. He's got Anquan Fagans, Alvin Henderson, and Jared Smith all up. Guys, if you want to know what these coaches are telling these guys, read those interviews because they are basically just saying back what was told to them while they were there. And it's all about early playing time. Look at what the freshmen did. That's the pitch, in case you're wondering.
And that's true. I mean, that is the one selling part. And like, if you're pitching recruiting, you talk about the number of freshmen you play, freshmen and sophomores. I mean, that you were chalked full with them. I guarantee you they were at least from the contributors, 10 to 11 sophomores and freshmen that played yesterday that were heavy contributors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, you even look at I looked at this earlier. Let me look at our game real quick. Look at so the leading tacklers on defense yesterday were DeMarcus Riddick, Keldrick Falk, Kayan Lee. That was your top 3. So a freshman, 2 sophomores. Then you get Keys Asante, then you get Caleb Harris. Yeah, there's no question. There's talented. There's talented youth there.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about that. What we got? Any more questions, Zach?
I think that was it. We got a new member while we were doing this. A new Plus member, Tyler Stone.
I saw that
while we were doing this, guys. Make sure you sign up for Plus. Man, we got some cool stuff going on there.
Well, yeah. I don't know.
It's hard to be right. I think that probably that statement, Justin, encapsulates how the large majority of the fan base feels right now is I don't know. And so they're looking for reasons to believe, and we'll find out, this coming week to see if Auburn can go to Athens and be able to win, which I would put the margin on that to be very slim, or at a minimum, just continue to play better, right? Like, I think you're looking for efficient football, as clean a football as you can play, and just continued development at positions on this team that are going to pay pay off later on down the road. It just, it's tough, man. It's tough to lose this many games in a row. It's tough. It's tough to discuss it in any positive way, but
that's my biggest struggle is it's happening and over and over again. That's the only thing keeping me from looking at recruiting and saying, just give it time.
Sure.
Is saying, okay, yeah, but why do we keep talking about the critical mistakes and games that you're better than them and you should have won and you're up double digits or whatever it is. And that's the tough one to overcome. And that's the one that you're like, boy, there's a lot of things pointing to, I don't know. But Andy Staples made a good point. They're close.
Yeah.
Outside of New Mexico State, which is the wild thing about this, by the way. The last game they didn't turn it over is New Mexico State, and that's easily the most embarrassing loss they've had. But Georgia close, Bama close, Arkansas, Cal, Oklahoma, Maryland wasn't close. You got beat down in that game. So there's some close ones in there. A&M handed it to them pretty good. I mean, if not for Asante's defensive touchdown, that game looks worse than it did in College Station. So there are a couple of bad ones.
Yeah, there are.
But yeah, you just the other part's hard is you literally don't have a data point to go, this is what it looks like when they play clean for 60 minutes, like when it goes well. Here is there one game. Even Bama, they ended up with a few turnovers there. That was pretty clean. Some of those turnovers were a couple of desperation, into the first half, Hail Mary from Peyton Thorne at the Alabama game, and then into the second half, basically desperation, fourth down. So really his two picks in the Iron Bowl last year were not really, they were kind of, you could almost exclude them because they didn't happen within the flow of the game. They really didn't have that big of an impact. But I don't have a game. Where do you point to and go, this is what happens when everything operates smoothly? This is what a Hugh Freeze team at Auburn looks like against a decent opponent. Don't nobody give me freaking, Alabama A&M or Samford.
No, I was going to say Arkansas 23 in 2023. That's probably where the cleanest game, the most efficient game that they've played. And you have to question whether or not Arkansas was completely checked out after the first two touchdowns in that game.
Yeah.
But that's the best opponent I can give you. And it also looking, how I would think a Hugh Freeze offense should look and a Hugh Freeze coach team should look on both sides of the ball.
Comments are cracking me up, dude.
What they got in there. I'm going to have to go look.
Don't do it.
Don't do it? They tear me up?
Don't do it.
They should post questions. Are they questions?
No, they're not. They're not even listening to us.
Oh, good. Yeah. So I don't know, man. Maybe we'll
I love the Auburn fans. You gotta love them, man. Keith Splon goes, we're gonna get that game at Athens this week.
Don't laugh.
It kills me. It's good stuff. I love it.
They just might. What do y'all want to see moving forward? Oh, Tyler, that is a loaded question. What do we want to see moving forward? I'll start with wins.
What does Jameis Winston say? Eat a dub.
Eat a dub.
No, I mean,
I saw a lot of good Saturday. Like if you came and you said, like a couple weeks ago, if you asked me what do I want to see moving forward, I'd say stretches of clean football. Give me 4 quarters, But you saw pretty good stretches of clean football Saturday. So like now I know that they're capable. Now it's
4 quarters.
Yeah.
Of clean football.
It's good decision making, 4 quarters, winning a game. You just can't make critical. You can make mistakes happen every game. You can't make
Justin,
There's
I want to
critical
ask
ones.
you. I want
There's
to ask you
ones
this
that have a lot more weight. What?
question for you specifically, because you were talking about Freeze getting on Peyton like he was,
Yeah.
right? Did you have? Was there a moment while you were watching that fiasco and thinking, "Oh no, it's about to get bad. This is not good. This is where it goes. This is where it goes awry right here."
There wasn't, but I mean, probably could have started to pick up on that. I mean, in the third quarter started to get sloppy. Auburn committed 5 penalties in that quarter. And then, you get into that fourth quarter. And I mean, I remember you and I were talking about it. I did not love what was happening. I did not love.
But did you
like
not? I know why you didn't love it, but did you also have a feeling in your stomach like,
no,
"Oh no, this is where it gets bad. This is where it starts turning the other way."
no. I mean, was it still 20? What was it? 21-16? No, I didn't think that. I just
I'm not
thought
gonna lie, I kind of did.
you thought, uh-oh.
Yes,
I didn't
because
think
there
big
was.
picture. I just thought like it
did,
encapsulated all the
because
pressure stuff.
I felt like Freeze or whoever's calling plays, Derek Nix, whoever had a really nice connection with Peyton Thorne in that game until that moment. And I was like, "Oh no!" That was my first thought. Was what happened? We had a good connect here. What happened?
It's hard. I mean, look, you're not on the headset. You don't know.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's the difficult part of sitting here on a Sunday and we're talking about this, is that unfortunately those conversations that take place between play caller and quarterback, we don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm with you, Cole, that when they scored that touchdown to make it 21-16, in the pit of my stomach, I started to think, okay, all right.
I know.
PTSD started to flare up on that one, right?
Sure.
So
that's kind of what I mean by being at home. You can hear the stadium collectively go, "Oh no."
yeah. Well,
It's just terrible if you're a player. God, it's awful. I don't blame them, but
the holding of breath. Yep. It's just difficult, man. It is, especially when you are in the middle of a losing streak like this and you're just looking for a victory. You have to have something to cling to. And I'm not sure where that turning point is going to be. What was the exact question again we're trying to answer? We're trying to pick out wins
What
for
do
the
you
rest
want
of
to
the
see
year.
moving forward?
A win in Columbia. That's what I want to see. Honestly.
Missouri.
I'm circling that one. You still need a signature win if you're Hugh Freeze. You need an opportunity if you're, the recruiter that I think he is and the salesman that I think he is. You need that on your resume to say, hey, this is what I can, this is what I can accomplish when I'm playing my guys. This is what I can accomplish when everything is, where it needs to be. And then when we add you to the roster, we'll have what we need to make sure that we execute like this. He needs that game, and he needs to try to fight like hell to get to 5 or 7 and 6 and 6. That's what I need to see moving forward. If it ends up 3-9, 4-8, I'm not even sure what the conversation is like. I know that it's extremely emotionally charged at that point, and anything that I say right now is not going to hold true when that actually takes shape.
Yeah. That's something to remember too when people ask, and we'll roll after this, but when people are asking on the board, like every mistake, every loss, the variables change. The landscape changes at that point, which is by the way, part of what Hugh Freeze is dealing with is not fair to him, because you have 2 years of Harsin built up that is adding to this. Was so frustrating for fans that you don't have the leash you wish you did. It's in terms of benefit of the doubt, unfortunately. And so he has to sort of deal with a little bit of that too, but it's part of the deal, part of the job.
It is. It is an unfortunate part of the job, but one that you signed up for. And so with that $6.5 million comes a lot. And so you got to be able to, have a thick skin and continue to try to grind away and do whatever, I respect this about Hugh, And I think that at the same time, it may get into trouble at times, but he believes, man. He believes in his way of doing it. He believes in his way of calling the game. And I think eventually that will pay off for him. I do. I think he's going to have a breakthrough moment because everything's going to click. But getting to that point, are you cutting your nose off to spite your face? I don't know. But you need to see it start to move. And to me, this was, from an offensive standpoint, this was a game you can hang your hat on and say, hey, man, we did all this right. And we came up a little bit short. Can we put that together 2 weeks in a row, 3 weeks in a row, and we're going to break through? But we need this level of effort and energy and consistency. And the play calling's got to continue to improve as well. And maybe even more than play calling, it's just in-game management. Don't give the option. Like Cole talked about, lock the RPO, call a designed run. Don't put everything on your quarterback until he's proved to you that you can. And I'm not saying that Peyton hasn't earned that. Like throughout that game, I thought he was earning that. And that's probably why he gave Peyton those first 2 calls, right? Because up until that point, Peyton has executed what you've asked him to.
Yeah.
So to take his legs out from underneath him and not give him those options, maybe he was thinking, okay, he's earned it at this point. And then things got a little bit sideways. So, we could continue to debate this for another 30 minutes to an hour, dude. You know what I mean? It's not easy to discuss a loss, not of this kind, right? Like when you get blown out, it's really easy to pinpoint what's wrong.
Right.
Yeah. All right, let's roll. Appreciate everybody joining us. Love the questions. I'll be okay. I'll be okay. Everybody's, just everybody step away from the message board for a minute.
Yep.
Appreciate everybody joining us. AuburnLive.com. Subscribe. Go check out the Plus channel. Do all that fun stuff, and we'll be back next week. We'll talk about Auburn, Georgia, and we'll see what we can see against by far the best team Auburn's played this year. We'll see what they got. All right, see you guys.